Lake Oswego, Oregon. If you're thinking about moving here, you're probably asking yourself, can I afford to live here? It is very expensive, but just how expensive? In this video, I'm going to break down some of the bigger costs. All that starts now. Hey everyone, Seth Marchant with the Home Team Brokers here. Welcome back to the channel, or if you're new to this channel, living in Oregon, you'd like to see more about what it's like to live in Oregon, make sure and hit the subscribe button and tap the bell. That way you'll be notified every time we drop a new video, which is twice a week. And if you're somebody that's thinking about moving here, as much as we like making these videos as licensed real estate brokers in the state of Oregon, we'd love to help you move here. You can call us, text us, email us, or you can even click the link below in the description. Just click that more button below this YouTube video for all of our contact information. You can find a link if you want to schedule a Zoom call with us, typically best for people coming from out of state. Lake Oswego, Oregon, live where you play is their motto here, and it's not cheap to live here. Let's start with the big cost first, housing. I'm going to break this down into attached, 3-bed, 4-bed, 5-bed, and just the overall average for single family homes here in Lake Oswego. Your average price for attached is $668. The median is $565. Your average 3-bedroom home in Lake Oswego is $925. The median is $770. 4-bed is $1.4 million, and the median's $1.1. And then 5-bed is actually a little bit less at $1.3, and the median's at $1.3 million for 5-bedroom homes. This is data taken from sales over the past month. We're in Q3 of 2022. And then the average price is 1.1, almost 1.2. The median's closer to 900,000. So Lake Oswego is going to be one of the most expensive, if not the most expensive place to live in the state of Oregon for housing. You do have a few other places in Portland that are probably pretty close to the same prices, but Lake Oswego is probably going to be just a touch higher than everywhere else, at least if you consider both zip codes. Along with high home costs, you're also going to be looking at an HOA. Now the HOAs are maybe not as bad as you might think. You'll find a handful of HOAs around here that are just at $100 a year, $150 a year. You're also going to find HOAs that are going to be $200 to $300 a year, in some cases $300 to $400 a year. Those HOAs are typically going to be some sort of community with attached housing that covers your exterior, so roof and siding. But a lot of HOAs that are probably falling right in that kind of like $200 a month mark. So you're going to be looking about maybe $2,500 a year for a lot of the HOAs in Lake Oswego. A lot of that's going to cover maintenance. You're going to also have things like clubhouse, basketball court, tennis court, similar amenities like that. You might also find that the HOAs here are maybe going to be a little bit more restrictive than some of the other HOAs that you'll find around the Portland metro area. Now, HOAs definitely have that stigma. You kind of either love them or hate them, right? Some people love to have the HOAs to have the rules, those covenants, rules, and conditions. Other people don't like HOAs because they don't like to be restricted by certain things such as design. But there are a lot of HOAs here, and they will vary. If you have any questions about specific HOAs, the covenants, conditions, or rules, you can get in touch with us and we can fill you in there. All right, so how about entertainment? What's entertainment costs going to be like in Lake Oswego? Probably a little bit higher. Your restaurants, you do have some higher end restaurants here, maybe more so than some of the other surrounding areas. So your food costs with going out are probably going to be a little bit more expensive. You do have things here like a Salt and Straw, for example. If you're not familiar with Salt and Straw, it's sort of like an artisan ice cream company that was founded in Portland just over 10 years ago. And it's an example of something that you probably might not find in a whole lot of other places, or economically might not be able to sustain itself in other places. I think I bought my first pint of ice cream at Salt and Straw maybe 7 or 8 years ago, something like that. I remember it being somewhere around the neighborhood of $6 a pint. I don't know what prices are at this very moment. I probably don't want to quote food costs because they've gone up so much, and I don't want this to be misleading when somebody watches this 6 months later, but well over 10 bucks a pint at this point, I think, which 7 or 8 years ago, what was an average pint of ice cream? Probably $3 on the cheap end, maybe $5 for like Haagen-Dazs or something like that. So $6, 7 or 8 years ago was definitely considered more expensive, and now paying over $10 for a pint of ice cream, a lot of people wouldn't do that. In fact, I remember when Salt and Straw was coming to Lake Oswego, which wasn't that long ago, it was just a couple years ago. I heard a lot of people online, like on Facebook or next door, say that nobody's gonna pay those prices, you know, for ice cream. And that turned out, you know, of course, not to be true. Now that might not be true, you know, that might not be true in some places in Clackamas County, but in Lake Oswego, just like their first couple locations, which were in Portland, the line is typically out the door, especially on like a warm summer night. And you do have the Lake Oswego Creamery, which is just across the street, which has been there for as long as I can remember, which is, you know, just like a regular ice cream place, you know, with probably pretty standard ice cream prices. So I think there's a lot of nostalgia there, maybe for some people that live here, you know, seeing that competition pop up across the street. Another example, maybe about 100 feet away from where I'm walking here in Millennium Plaza, would be Domain Serene. They've opened up a lounge here, maybe in the last couple years, been maybe about a year and a half or so since they opened up. If you're not familiar with Domain Serene, it's one of the many great wineries from Oregon in our wine country, which is in the Willamette Valley. It's about an hour or so from here. And Domain Serene is definitely on the upper end of cost. Might be at the very top. I haven't compared all, but yeah, for example, you're probably not going to find a bottle of wine for less than $40 or $50, and a lot of bottles commonly, you know, over $100. You know, small charcuterie boards like 50 bucks, stuff like that. So you wouldn't find probably a Domain Serene in too many other places, but you will find one in a Lake Oswego. So you might find that with going out to eat, you're probably going to spend a little bit more money. Aside from that, you've got a ton of great parks, just like a lot of other places in the Portland metro area, but Lake Oswego is definitely no exception. We've got Tryon Creek State Park here, which is an awesome park, which just has miles and miles of trails that you can run, hike, walk. And then you've got things like George Rogers Park all on the Willamette River, and you've even got a little bit of sandy bank there too, which you don't have too much sand along the Willamette River. So definitely a cool park, attracts a lot of people when the weather's nice. Pro tip there, check the water quality if you're going to go on the Willamette River. It's not always recommended, but nonetheless, beautiful park, and there's a lot of parks like that throughout Lake Oswego. You do also have some golf courses here. You have Lake Oswego Country Club here, which is a very exclusive country club. I believe there's a wait list, and as far as prices go, when I looked on the website recently, I think for a corporate or a proprietary membership, it was $45,000 at one time, about 800 bucks a month. For just more of a kind of a standard membership, which would include spouse and unmarried children, you're looking at a $6,000 one-time cost, and then your monthly dues, I think, were more like $380, $400 a month, which is about as expensive of a country club or golf course as there is in the Portland metropolitan area, and really probably one of the more exclusive clubs for clubs in general in the Portland metropolitan area. Your nearest mall is Bridgeport Village, which is an outdoor mall, one of the newer, I suppose the newest mall in the Portland metropolitan area, and probably in Oregon. Really nice mall. You don't have any family fun centers, no bowling or rock walls or laser tag or arcades or any kind of things like that in Lake Oswego. You'll probably have to go to some of the neighboring towns like a Beaverton or a Tigard, which isn't too far away. And then being so close to Portland, because Portland's just about 10 minutes north of here, being so close to Portland, you might find yourself going to Portland more often for entertainment or for food. And so for that reason, you might find yourself spending a little bit more money. Now, that's really kind of varied over the last few years with the kind of the state that Portland has been in over the last few years. A lot of people that live in Clackamas and Washington County, out in the suburbs, just outside of Portland, but still consider the Portland metro area, people are not traveling downtown Portland as much as they used to, just simply because they don't feel safe. That has changed a little bit in the last few months with some of the new policies that Portland has enacted. So for the last few years, you weren't finding too many people from the suburbs going to Portland, but that is, hopefully we're going to get back to a place where people feel more comfortable going to Portland, because it really is a great place when things are going well and crime isn't rampant. But so if you live in Lake Oswego, you might find yourself going downtown more to like a Blazer game or to a restaurant or whatever it may be. Now that takes us into Commute. What is the commute like for people that live in Lake Oswego? Well, you could probably argue that Lake Oswego has maybe the best location in the Portland metropolitan area. If you look at it on a map, it is very centrally located. Again, Portland is just 10 minutes north of here. If you're working on the west side, like a lot of people do, maybe at Nike or Intel, that's 20 minutes away, maybe 30 minutes away max if you have to go really far west, like even further than Beaverton, like out towards Hillsborough. So you can definitely make an argument that the location here is going to be as good as really anywhere else in Portland, and people that live here probably find themselves spending less money on gas because you just don't have to travel as far because you're so centrally located. All right, next, average age of home. So why do we put this on the list? You know, the average age of homes, if you're going into an area, depending on if the homes are newer or older, that's going to dictate kind of what you're going to spend on that home over the course of the next 5, 10, 20 years, however long you live there. And in Lake Oswego, you're probably going to find as great of a spectrum for homes here as really anywhere else kind of in the surrounding areas. Lake Oswego was founded in the mid 1800s, incorporated in the early 1900s. A lot of the houses like downtown, kind of around Millennium Plaza where I was just walking around, a lot of those houses were built in the early 1900s. A lot of the houses there that are still there built the 20s, 30s, and then on kind of to mid-century. So you'll find a lot of houses built 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s. And the houses here that are older are very, very well maintained. Because real estate here is very valuable, people, of course, are much more incentivized to maintain their home, and you just probably won't find as much deferred maintenance on homes here in Lake Oswego as you might some of the other surrounding areas. And the homes that really weren't maintained that well get torn down, which is not as common in some of the other surrounding areas. It doesn't make as much sense to do tear downs in some of the other surrounding towns as it does Lake Oswego. So what you do tend to find is you might find a home that was built in the 20s, and then next door they're building a brand new house. Right now, there's close to maybe about 25 homes that are either currently being built or were recently finished and are on the market. And all of those homes are just on single lots. So we're not talking about a subdivision with dozens of different homes. These are homes that were developed on a vacant lot, which there are not a ton of left, or they were a tear down, like I mentioned. So typically when you find a larger spectrum of homes, and especially when you find a lot of homes that are older, you're going to expect to spend more money on maintenance. But in this case, in Lake Oswego, you won't expect to find that as much. All right, property taxes. This one's tricky. Property taxes are not going to be cheap in Lake Oswego, but it's not going to be easy to find out exactly what they are online. It can be done if you know how to do it. The best thing to do is probably to reach out to us. We do have a video if you want to watch a video on specifically on property taxes. But the easiest thing to remember is that we have a law that was passed in 1997 that limits how much somebody's property taxes can increase over the course of a year, and it limits it to 3%. So as real estate brokers, we can always go back and look at what a homeowner paid for those property taxes for the previous year and usually tack on 3%, and that's about what you would expect to pay for the following year. Now that 3% rule does not include bonds, and you'll find that there's usually going to be quite a few bonds, especially in a place like this. People in Lake Oswego do tend to vote for a lot of bonds. I see people making jokes online that there's never been a bond that somebody that lives in Lake Oswego doesn't like. So for me, I live next door in West Lynn, and to give you an idea of my property taxes, the total amount I paid, my bonds were maybe about 22, 23% more in addition to my property taxes. So if your property taxes are 10 grand, you're probably going to pay an extra maybe $2,000 to $3,000 for bonds as well. Now the only other thing that's really going to make a big impact on your property taxes, other than that 3% rule, is when that was enacted, which again was back in 1997. They took data from 95, 96 for home values for their baseline. And so homes that were built back then have been capped at 3% every year. If you take a house that was built a year or two ago, you're going to be paying much higher property taxes. So it is possible to find, again, a house that was built in 1920 or sometime before 1997, and then a brand new house right next to it. And those houses, the property sizes, lot size might be the same, house size might be the same, but the property taxes might vary quite a bit. So again, best thing to do is just get with us and we can always figure out exactly what the taxes were and project out what they'll be for the next year. All right, how about childcare? What are you looking at for childcare? So childcare on average, from what I could find online, lowest you're probably gonna pay is about 800 bucks per child. That would be like a school age child. 1,200 bucks for an infant, all the way up to $1,700. You might even find some costs more than that. There's not, from what I could see online, per capita, there's not a ton of childcare service providers in Lake Oswego, at least maybe compared to some of the other surrounding areas, whether it's like a Happy Valley or a Tualatin or a Beaverton. And that just might be because there's maybe more stay-at-home parents here, more people that don't need childcare. But all in all, the childcare is pretty similar to a lot of the other surrounding areas. And then finally, we have household income, and we'll put household income in there because that can kind of dictate some things like prices, like food prices, like having a Salt and Straw or a Domain Serene. Like I said, you're not going to find those in surrounding towns. The average income is $168,000. The median is $114,000. Now, the average is going to be higher than pretty much anywhere else in the state of Oregon, but those two numbers might be a little bit misleading in that your average might be inflated a little bit more. You do have some very high income earners in Lake Oswego, like for example, professional athletes, a lot of Blazers that live here. So there's a lot of people that have really high incomes that are probably skewing the numbers a little bit. And then you probably also have some people here that are probably fairly wealthy that don't have a ton of W-2 income, that maybe might be pulling that median down a little bit. The median might be a little bit higher, or at least the median probably, those numbers probably don't tell the entire story. There's definitely a lot more wealth here than if you're just kind of looking on the surface, looking at those numbers. And again, it's probably because there's a fair amount of people that just aren't paying a whole lot of taxes on W-2 income. But either way, those numbers are obviously high, and especially that average, not so much the median. The median's actually higher in Happy Valley, Oregon, than Lake Oswego, which there's certainly more money in Lake Oswego than there is Happy Valley. So you can kind of take that for what it's worth. So I hope that kind of gives you a better idea of what costs and cost of living look like in Lake Oswego. Overall, the answer you probably already knew is very expensive here. Now, with that being said though, I don't think it's prohibitive for everyone to come here. The average home value in the Portland metro area is somewhere in the mid fives right now, maybe say $550 or so. You could definitely get into Lake Oswego for $550. It's just that you're not going to get as much for your home. You might have to go like attached instead of detached or something like that. So if you want to be in an amazing area, centrally located, lowest crime, best schools, all that stuff, all the reasons why it's so desirable here, I think just about anybody can get in here. It's just a matter of finding the right property and just, again, kind of understanding that your dollar's not going to go as far, and you just might have to make some concessions as far as like size or maybe age of the home. If that helps you, give us a thumbs up. You can always leave a comment too and let us know what you think. And if you want to see more videos like this, make sure and subscribe and tap the bell so that way you're notified. And if you're somebody that's ready to take the next step, you can call, text, email, or like I've mentioned, you can click that more button just below to see the description and schedule a Zoom call with us. Until next time, everyone, take care.